Coming up on Primetime Lawmakers, long-awaited extensive criminal justice reform is introduced to the legislature. Governor Nathan Deal says there's still work to be done. The Atlanta Public Schools cheating scandal reaches the Capitol as legislation requiring the return of bonus money paid to teachers who altered standardized test scores clears the House. A bill to make assisting a suicide a felony passes committee. The measure also revokes the licenses of medical professionals who would offer suicide assistance. High occupancy toll lanes, hot lanes might hit a bump in the road as a proposal to place a moratorium on them is presented in committee the same day motorists paid a new high price. More on that criminal justice reform bill is coming up. It's the topic of our in-depth discussion tonight. I'll be joined on set by the Honorable Carol Hunstein, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Georgia, and Representative Wendell Willard, the Chair of the House Judiciary Committee. An in-depth analysis with our reporter roundtable tonight, Ed Bean of the Daily Report. Analysis you don't want to miss for Tuesday, February 28th, 2012, the 27th legislative day of the Georgia General Assembly. This is Primetime Lawmakers. Good evening and welcome to Primetime Lawmakers, GPB's nightly coverage of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm Scott Slade. Let's go live to the Capitol where Sandra Parrish reports there's now a bill on criminal justice reform.
Scott, Representative Rich Golick is sponsoring the bill that came out of recommendations from a special commission and panel to look at ways to reduce the state's prison population and its burgeoning budget.
The key on this is to spend our taxpayer dollars wiser, use more rehabilitation type alternatives, community-based alternatives where we can, especially for nonviolent drug offenders, while still maintaining our consistency in putting a public safety at the highest priority and keeping violent offenders behind bars where they belong.
But Governor Nathan Deal, who has championed the reform, is actually concerned over the increased cost associated with the bill.
The bill departs from the recommendations of the Criminal Justice Reform Council. Not significantly, but in some areas that I think will not produce the results that the council had originally intended. And we intend to work with the author of the bill and with the leadership of the House and the Senate and hopefully get it back closer to what the original recommendations were.
I know that reasonable minds differ. We all want to come together and work together, the House, the Senate, and the administration, on a consensus work product that really takes our criminal justice system and streamlines it, makes it more efficient and better for taxpayers in terms of how we spend their dollars while maintaining public safety. There are always going to be agreements and disagreements on a bill, but I think I've made it clear that the bill that we've put in is a starting point. It's a starting point for good faith negotiations between the House, the Senate, and the governor, and I think we're going to get something really terrific done.
Unlike other bills that have a deadline of next Wednesday to pass out of either the House or Senate, last year's legislation, which laid the groundwork for the bill, did not include the constraints of crossover day, and the measure can be taken up anytime before day 40. A bill to ban assisted suicides passes out of the House Judiciary Non-Civil Committee today. The measure stems from a state Supreme Court decision earlier this month that ruled Georgia's law from 1994 violated free speech rights. The bill by Representative Ed Setzler bans all assisted suicides, and anyone who violates it would face a felony. He made a few minor changes after yesterday's public hearing.
Frankly, in talking to the Medical Association, there were some concerns that given the narrowing language, that there could be legitimate, again, taking someone off of kidney dialysis, if it was required to be demonstrated to relieve pain or discomfort, then that wouldn't really apply. So folks who, physicians and medical professionals who are part of that under the base bill would not have been covered. So we've parsed this out to make sure it covers and frankly exempts from any kind of criminal or civil responsibility, a broad array of activities to make it more appropriate with the intention of the bill.
The bill passed along party lines and now heads to the House Rules Committee. The House considers several bills today, including one to take away incentive pay of teachers who falsify standardized tests.
This just affects the bonus that they received for any standardized test achievement which they later admit to or is found guilty of falsifying. This does not affect any due process rights that are currently enjoyed by this class of employees. It does not give them any additional rights either.
The House also passed a bill from last year to create a government oversight committee to determine the need of state-run programs and agencies.
If you recall, last year we had language in that bill to merge the House and Senate Budget Office, which our friends across the hall did not take kindly to. They didn't want that to be the first group that we would call into account. So we have worked with them on a conference committee report, which was signed, but it didn't take effect immediately. So what I bring to you today is House Bill 456. This would be a recommending body. Any abolishment would have to come back before this House and the Senate by joint resolution to be approved.
The bill passed 108 to 50. The House also spent time today debating a bill dealing with insurance policies.
House Bill 986 is a simple one-page bill. It allows the insurance industry to better serve all the citizens of Georgia. This bill provides a legal backstop for the industry to be able to offer materials other than English to Georgians for whom English is not their primary language. Citizens can better understand insurance products if they are written in Korean, Spanish, Vietnamese, their native language. The English version of the policy shall be the legally binding document to resolve any possible dispute or claim.
I actually agree with the intent of the author's bill. However, although it's a simple bill, the devil is in the details, and specifically line 11. If you read line 11, it says, in the event of a dispute or complaint. It does not limit what the dispute or complaint could be. The problem with this bill is that it actually says that if you lie in Spanish or Korean or Vietnamese or Chinese, you no longer have that right. Because the rule says that if it's a dispute or complaint, that dispute or complaint would be the complaint that someone deceived you. So even though the intent is only to touch marketing materials, because of the vague language in this bill, it actually covers and exonerates any person who lies to you in a different language.
Now, because of concerns raised with the bill, Representative Hembree decided to send it back to committee for further clarification. Before the House took up any bills today, a bipartisan group of members took to the well to support an urging resolution on video lottery.
Some of you might have remembered a few weeks ago we had the Lottery Commission ask us to give them some direction. What this does is it says that before any video lottery terminals can be placed in any of these entertainment centers in the state, that first your local officials, since they have to pass the ordinances, rules, and regulations, and also to police it, they have to step up to the plate and vote for it themselves, ladies and gentlemen. This is a local control measure. It doesn't say that you're for or against the lottery or the hope, but it says your local officials have to raise their hand if they want this in their area.
And Representative Roger Williams, who was actually in the well there speaking as well, he said with Hope running out of money, video lottery would generate $45 million a year to the lottery-funded scholarship. Scott?
Sandra, Governor Deal's been pretty emphatic about how he feels about video lottery gaming in Georgia, has he not?
He has. He has spoken in the past that he is actually against video lottery and has actually said as soon as this session that he would not be for any changes right now to the lottery, to the Hope Scholarship. He actually thinks that video lottery could compete with the lottery that we have in place now.
All right, thank you very much, Sandra. In the aftermath of the passage of HB 87, Georgia's controversial immigration law by Georgia legislators last year, the Senate Judiciary Committee has passed a measure that could affect undocumented college students in Georgia. The Board of Regents states there are around 300 undocumented students in Georgia's entire university system. Now, primetime lawmakers Kelly Murray attends a rally bringing the issue in front of the people.
Students and educators from around the state held a press conference this morning to voice their concerns about a potential ban on undocumented students in Georgia's public colleges.
HB 59 and SB 458 are worse than any other anti-immigrant bill that has come before us for one reason. It is the only policy that seeks to punish infants and toddlers for their actions of their parents.
Supporters of the bill argue that precedence should be given to those students who are here legally.
We encourage all nationalities, people to come here. We're the greatest nation on the face of the earth. Students want to come to our colleges and universities and learn. We want to make sure that those who come here legally have precedent, and our own citizens have precedent to attend our colleges and universities.
Board of Regents Chancellor Hank Huckabee supports current regulations, which are that undocumented students should not receive the benefits of paying in-state tuition. Out-of-state tuition is approximately 3 times higher than in-state tuition.
These legislators that have introduced yet again onerous, really despicable legislation that goes against what our educators in higher ed have advised.
The proposition of this bill gives me the worst feeling of rejection and discrimination that I have ever experienced.
The bill, having already passed in Senate committee, is now awaiting debate on the Senate floor. For Primetime Lawmakers, I'm Kelly Murray.
Georgia consumers could soon be paying sales tax for some online purchases under legislation that passed a House Ways and Means subcommittee today. The bill would impose the state sales tax on items purchased online from websites based in the state of Georgia. Sponsor Representative Matt Ramsey says the legislation would make it possible to restore the sales tax holiday for back-to-school shopping. Ramsey says collecting the sales tax would generate about $18 million, which would be enough to offset the revenue Georgia loses during the sales tax holiday. The bill does not impose the tax on all transactions, only those through websites based in Georgia and considered affiliates of national retailers. An affiliate gets a commission for sales generated from ads on their sites. The full House Ways and Means Committee is expected to vote on the measure at its next meeting. Supporters of the legislation hope that will be before the crucial March 7th crossover day. Well, on the day that the Hot Lane Express lanes in Gwinnett County hit a new record high price, Hot Lanes was a hot topic today. Our Keosha Howard is standing by live at the Capitol with those details. Keosha.
Scott, the Senate Transportation Committee today held a public hearing on a bill calling for a 3-year moratorium to stop future high occupancy toll lane projects. In a bipartisan effort, Democratic Senator Kirk Thompson and Republican Senator Renee Unterman present the bill.
This bill would declare a moratorium on further approved hot lane construction. The reason being, or the purpose would be, first of all, so that we could study the issue further, whether or not these hot lanes work and how they work. If we're going to do something, it needs to be something that is working and that provides either better air quality or better movement of overall traffic. Because if you're looking at economic development, companies looking whether to relocate here or whether to start up here aren't looking at, can I tell my employees that they can individually go out and purchase individual possible better drive times. They're looking at the overall quality of life in the area, the overall traffic drive times.
We did not vote on it. And as I came to find out after looking at the issue a little bit more clearly, that approximately $15 million was transferred from bond money that was left over from another project by the DOT board to put in to the effort of creating this demonstration project. The power of the General Assembly has been usurped, and I call it an alphabet soup that's responsible. We have Greta, we have MARTA, we have CERTA, we have the DOT, the Georgia State DOT, and we have the Gwinnett County DOT. And for us to have all of these agencies and to have no accountability and not to have the General Assembly to have input into it, to me it's an insult.
Gina Evans with the state tollway authority says the hot lanes are good for the state and that utilization of the lanes is steadily improving.
Of course, October was difficult as we expected it to be, and November, December, January, and February we've seen a steady recovery both in speeds and in volumes in those lanes. This process is going to take us a year at least to look at and evaluate.
This was just a public hearing, so no vote was taken today. Senator Thompson did also say that if this bill passes, it will not affect the proposed 75 projects, just projects after that. In other news, the Senate today passed a bill to redraw some Senate districts. New Senate maps were drawn and passed during the special session this past fall, but changes that would affect Augusta brought the bill back to the floor today.
The senator from the 24th approached me with a proposal that he and the senator from the 23rd had addressed, which moves senator from the 24th back into Richmond County, North Richmond County, which is an area of his birth and childhood. He's conducted business in this area for all of his adult life. It extends his district further along the Savannah River.
This is nothing more than a power grab and an attempt to dictate the affairs of Augusta from Columbia County. More outrageous than anything concerning these maps is the knowledge that the proposed new map is the direct result by members of Augusta's own business community who believe in controlling every aspect of the city. Not only is this disingenuous and extremely polarizing, but it was done without any input from the residents of Richmond County or the duly and legally elected legislative delegation. The two senators that were involved, the 23rd and the 24th, came to him with a request. The only problem with that is that I'm the one who lives in Richmond County. Neither of them do.
And the redistricting bill does pass. Also making its way out of the Senate today, a measure that would allow citizens to display the nation's motto, "In God We Trust," instead of their county name on their license plate. The decal would be optional and free.
This is an option. In other words, when I go buy a license plate, or John Doe goes and buys a license plate, he will be given the choice of whether to put Haralson County or "In God We Trust" sticker on the license plate.
That's
at no charge.
At no charge. It is absolutely optional. No one be forced to display this, and the legislation, of course, allows you to display our nation's motto on any plate.
Scott, in an effort to be more technology friendly, the Senate also passes a measure that would allow agencies to conduct open meetings via conference call today.
All right, Kiyoshi, thank you very much. Presidents from all 35 of Georgia's colleges and universities gathered in one room of the governor's mansion today to celebrate the beginning of what looks to be a promising future for college graduates. Complete College Georgia. Georgia is one of 30 states involved in similar programs and projects that the plan would add, and projects that the plan would add 250,000 college graduates by the year 2020.
One of the most important things that sets Georgia apart as a destination for growth of business is the fact that we have a talented workforce. Our post-secondary institutions serve as the pipeline for that workforce, and we hope that you will continue to do the job that you have done in the past of meeting the needs of our Georgia companies and giving us the opportunity to draw even more companies to our state.
The project will be funded in part by a $1 million grant from the Complete College America Alliance and the Lumina Foundation. This afternoon marked the beginning of that initiative on college campuses in Georgia. In his State of the State address at the beginning of the session, Governor Nathan Deal spoke about the work of the Criminal Justice Reform Council and his budget priorities for the criminal justice system. Yesterday, legislation was introduced to bring some of the recommendations of the council into the process of criminal justice reform. Joining me now to talk about the pending legislation and other challenges that face our justice system are Chief Justice Carol Hunstein of the Supreme Court of Georgia and Representative Wendell Willard, Chair of the House Judiciary Committee and co-sponsor of the new legislation. Thank you both so much for joining us tonight. This is important, to say the least.
Honored to be here.
And the governor talked about this, Madam Chief Justice, in his State of the State message. You certainly brought it up in your State of the Judiciary Commission.
Yes.
You and I were here to talk about it last year, and you served on that special council.
I did serve on that council.
Talk about some of the goals, because you can't talk about the legislation specifically in your position, but talk about some of the goals of this council.
The goals of the council were really, the basic goals were twofold. One was to be smarter on crime and to save the taxpayer monies, to keep the taxpayers safer while also saving the money. We have a criminal, our correction department has over $1 billion budget, and it will grow within the next 6 or 7 years to another $264 million. And we're not getting the return we need. By putting nonviolent criminals in the prison system, we need those prison beds for those who are dangerous, not those we're just mad at.
And one of the ways that the council recommended doing that was changing some of the thresholds, correct? Among some of the crimes, for instance, the amount of money involved in a burglary or shoplifting.
That's correct.
Between misdemeanors and felonies.
That's correct. I think it's been about 30 years since those limits were set. And the proposal is to raise it to about $1,000 now. And both Texas and South Carolina have done the same. Raise the threshold between a misdemeanor and a felony.
Chairman Willard, the governor came out and said that this is a good start, but he's not happy with some of the guts inside the bill that actually start putting some of this into law. Where's the discrepancy?
I think part of it, Scott, addresses the not having in the bill some of the discretionary rights that the commission felt should be vested with the courts in considering sentencing. For whatever reason, that is not the focus in the bill that we thought it would be. I say we, coming from the commission report to the drafting the bill, somewhere there's been a change in that part of it, and we need to try and address that.
It's also going to cost some money to put this whole measure into effect, of things like accountability courts, a whole different way of treating nonviolent offenders. Will that be money that will be made back on the other end?
Oh, go ahead, Carol. You may want to address that. But
it is not 100% savings as far as the reduction in the corrections budget, because about 60% of the savings is going to have to go into funding accountability courts. Those courts are very labor intensive, and but they work. They really do address the demand for drugs and address addiction, which is frequently the source of the criminal activity.
Chairman?
I would say it also gives, as she points out, greater oversight on a day-to-day basis. Rather than have the person in a corrections institution where you're paying $54 a day, you've got them in a situation back in their community being really watched over by probation officers, required to report, required to take testing, required to work, and really be hopefully getting back as a contributor to the community.
Meanwhile, juvenile justice reform has been in the process for a longer period of time. And we were talking earlier, $54 a day to incarcerate an adult. What does it cost today to incarcerate a juvenile?
Over $200 a day. And that cost is something that's really, to me, hard to explain. But of course, you have various different needs that you have from a adult. You have a child who's in the state custody. You've got to educate them. So we got a school system set up as a part of the juvenile justice system. We also have counselors, special counselors, and also there's a higher ratio of correction personnel to juveniles.
So we're a little further along with that process, Chief Justice?
I think that's right. It's hard to believe, but about 2/3 of the juveniles who are in some form of correctional institute have drug problems. And about, I think, 1/3 have mental health problems. Those issues need to be addressed before they become adults and become criminals that go into the state system.
Both these efforts do address special counsels who've taken a look at how to do this. Chairman, are you helpful that they'll be able to work inside the framework here and get something everybody's happy with?
I think we're going to be taking major steps this year. I think there will be also incremental steps as we continue down the road. The big things we're doing right now is tomorrow. I'm very proud to say that the House is going to have on the floor consideration of a complete rewrite of our juvenile code, which addresses a lot of these policy issues that we're talking about as ways to improve the justice system for children.
Treating kids more often than locking them up is what you're saying, at least the nonviolent ones.
My point is keep them there again, keep children in the community. The worst thing I think you can do is take a child out of their community, ship them off 100, 200 miles from their home into a state custody, and there's no family, there's no connections, and then there we really take them to a place where they can be trained to be better professional criminals later.
Both these efforts are landmark. Thank you both for what you've done so far, and we'll watch what happens as the days tick by. Thank you very much both for joining us.
Thank you.
Glad to be with you.
Appreciate it. We've got to take a short break of Primetime Lawmakers, so don't go anywhere. There's much more to come. We'll bring in one of the best legal journalists of the state when we come back. Ed Bean of the Daily Report will help put this into perspective in just a moment. Welcome back to Primetime Lawmakers. Time for our Reporter Roundtable, part of the show where we tap our stable to the best journalist in the state. And tonight I'm joined by Ed Bean, Editor-in-Chief of the Daily Report. Great to have you back with us. We started our season talking about justice reform, and here we finally have some language in a bill. And when you get right down to it, inside all this, does it really come down to how the money is going to be moved around to make this happen?
A lot of this, Scott, is indeed going to come down to money. There are a lot of savings on the back end of a program like this, but there's also a lot of investment on the front end, and the legislature is going to have to decide just how much money it wants to put into it. Give you an example. When Texas enacted its criminal justice reform package in 2007, or the major part of it, they put about $50 million a year into juvenile programs, to alternatives to incarceration for juveniles. So that was an extra $50 million that they put in to that budget. That came back to them 2 or 3 years later in savings that were a multiple of that amount, but they had to have the political will on the front end to invest in that.
So the political will certainly be part of that. And as far as the money is concerned, what are we talking about here? $1 million, tens of millions of dollars? In Texas example, for instance, they spent, what, $50 million to make this happen?
That was just for the juvenile portion. And,
okay.
You know, the legislature and I think the council as well has been remarkably silent on the money issue. And that, I think, is one of the elephants in the room on this.
Now, as far as justice reform is concerned, really when you get right down to it, we're talking about changing some sentencing guidelines, moving the thresholds around. For instance, in the old days, it was $300 considered to be a felony in shoplifting. This new law would raise it to a $1,000 level. Is there going to be any pushback on that, or is that just bringing it up to modern times?
Well, I think on the felony levels, that's bringing it up to modern times. But beyond that, Scott, I think we're looking at kind of a fundamental paradigm shift in how we view criminal justice, or at least we're starting the conversation on that. You know, if you look back in the 19th century, we never talked about rehabilitation. We just talked about punishment. 20th century, we moved to more of a balanced approach. Late 80s, early 90s, we had a little bit of pushback on that, and we had some laws like the so-called two strikes, which increased the punishments again. And now, quite remarkably, we're seeing this effort led by, for the most part, conservative think tanks that is asking us to re-examine how we look at criminal justice.
Will there be a lot of static over changing the way the state looks at drug crimes? That's a big part of this, but treating drug offenders more like sick people than criminals, unless they're violent.
Well, you've hit on it, Scott, and that is just a huge issue. You know, we have a plague of drugs in our society, and particularly some really destructive ones like meth that just, you know, tear individuals and families apart. And the main way that we have discouraged people from using drugs in the past is to hold out the potential of prison time. And for most people, that is a pretty effective way to discourage them. But obviously, it's not worked real well because we have more drug crimes all the time. So we're looking at really the beginning a conversation here where we have a very fundamental re-examination of how we deal with drugs and discourage the use of drugs in our society.
And then in 20 seconds so we have left, you as a criminal justice specialist, what are you going to be watching in the legislature the next few days?
Well, I think that the governor has not really made it clear, at least publicly, what he's dissatisfied with in this bill. I think some of that probably comes down to how much money is spent and where it is spent. And those conversations are no doubt taking place behind closed doors. And in the days ahead, I'm sure that we'll see some movement on that.
We will watch the daily report for some movement on that. Thank you very much, Ed. Being great to see you again.
Thank you, Scott.
Coming up tomorrow on Lawmakers, the enabling legislation for the state charter school constitutional amendment is scheduled for a hearing in the House Education Committee. And it's the end of another legislative week. Yes, a three-day week. That means we'll be joined by Buddy Darden and Bill Crane for some analysis and political commentary. Plus all the latest news from under the Gold Dome tomorrow on Primetime Lawmakers right here at 7. If you missed any part of this broadcast, you can catch Primetime Lawmakers when it repeats tomorrow morning at 5:30. And coming up next to GPB, it's Georgia Outdoors. Join host Sharon Collins as she goes fiddling with crabs. That's Georgia Outdoors coming up next here on GPB. And that's our broadcast for this 27th legislative day of the 2012 session. I'm Scott Slade. See you tomorrow night at 7 for Primetime Lawmakers. Have a good night.
This is a GPB original production.